Welcome to the Rebel Rise podcast, a place where badass women like you come to connect, learn, and grow. Here, we celebrate the relentless spirit of women who dare to dream and design their own destinies. Now, this is your time for no bullshit, so no subject is off limits. This is a time for you to collect inspiration and create the vision for your life. Get ready to break free from societal expectations, take your power back, and step into your dream life. Your empowerment journey begins right here. Let's go. Hey everybody, quick post-production note for you before we jump into our podcast today. There was an interruption in our internet connection during this conversation. So you may notice a slight jump in the flow of our conversation towards the end of the episode, but rest assured, we covered all of our bases in there and we hope that you enjoy it. So today we are meeting with Shelly Vecchio, who is known as the Resilience Coach. And I am really excited to have her on because she is full of personality and has so many gifts and so many things that she's doing to impact women. And I am just, Shelly, I'm so excited to have you on today. So first of all, welcome to the Rebel Rise podcast. And I want to start by having you just talk a little bit about your origin story and how you transformed into the resilience coach that you are today.
Oh, that is the whole thing is beautiful. And thank you for having me. And I love that so much. And I'm so excited to be here. It's really funny because you would have asked me 10 days ago, my origin story would have landed so differently than it just did. And it feels very superhero-esque right now to me, which is very interesting. However, so I would say that one, thank you for having me. Two, the resilience coach. It feels so good to be called that, but I'm also still like questioning it at the same time, right? Because my entire life, if you think about the origin story, there was always labels. And even when I was little, it was, you got to sit down, be the good girl, be quiet, be this, be that, right? So there was always a lot of labels in my life. The fat girl, the loud girl, the curly hair girl. And I really don't like labels anymore. I'm like, because I've noticed over life that I have evolved so much. And I think that we get to evolve even more throughout our growth and our life. And that never stops happening, to put a label on ourselves and say, I'm this type of coach. Well, next month, I'm a different type of coach. Like, does it matter? Right. So like the life of labels is very interesting to me. And that's just kind of where that pulled it. But being the girl who was always bullied and grown up being quiet and being the good girl, dimming my light and being bullied my entire life, and then going through a lot of different life's traumas, right? Life's challenges, things like that. A lot of things have happened. I'm not going to get into every single one of them. However, they have all shown me how I am very resilient, very persistent, and I don't give up for anything. And like, I will not give up on myself for nothing. Like, nothing can make me want to give up on myself. And I feel like that is kind of where I always come back to when it comes to my resilience. And I think that's what really led me here. The life's challenges and traumas have led me here, but the healing and the growth has also led me here too. So I don't know about my origin story, honestly. My origin story started way back in 1600s. Right? When I was the first girl in 70 years to be born, right? Like I'm still figuring out that real answer. So that's an idea of it. And I'm going to leave it there for now.
Yeah, no, that's great. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that that's also a really great testament to like the fact that you don't have to have everything figured out. Right? Like you can simply say like, okay, this is what I lived through. These are the things that I've looked at as like, now I need to find a solution to survive, but then also to transform it. Right? Which is that huge resiliency piece. And you and I have been friends for a couple of years now,
Yeah.
and I have seen you go through some shit, girl. And I
My God.
have borne witness to you experiencing some of that in the moment and just like harnessing that, turning it into a superpower and like making shit happen for you. So I actually kind of love that, like, knowing coming on a podcast, like people are always going to ask, like, what is your origin story? Like, why are you here? Of course, I'm going to ask that as well. But to just come forth and be like, I don't really have one. And I'm not super worried about that because, like, this is the journey and like, this is where I am. Like, I honestly love that. And I think, just knowing you personally, that it, I don't know how to say it, but I feel like it really is in alignment with who you are. And I hope I'm not meaning like that's an insult at
I'm like,
all.
I'm not
Like
offended in any way. I'm like, go for
no,
it.
like I feel like you're really just riding the wave and you're honestly making shit happen for you. And it's so motivating to watch because I know that any of the women who
Aw.
follow the path that you're forging are going to be able to learn from that as well, right? And it doesn't have to be like a specific framework. It doesn't have to be I think you do have an actual framework in your program, which we'll talk about, but it doesn't have to be like anything specific because we were just talking before we started to record this and you were saying that like things change, right? Like, and you just said at the beginning of this, am I a resilience coach or am I something different? Or am I going to be something different next month, right? And it's all about the dynamics. So, obviously, like you've been living very dynamic. We'll probably talk about this a little bit. I know you're in a mastermind right now that's just like absolutely blowing your mind. So let's like maybe not talk about that unless you want to, but let's talk about like living in dynamics, right? Because it's so easy to get
Yeah.
caught up in our day to day and say, like, oh my God, my life sucks. I'm never going to get out of this. Like, when is this going to end? And so, what is the advice that you give women when you're talking to them about just kind of going with the flow and reaching for that belief that anything is possible?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I love that question. And it's such a simple answer. And I hate that it's so simple. Because it's that simple answer that you hear all the time. Love yourself. Give yourself compassion. Show yourself grace. Because we don't do that, right? We tend to be our own biggest bully rather than our own biggest cheerleader. And if we can simply shift just from that alone, it can make such a huge difference because we are so self-deprecating and we don't even realize it, right? We don't even see it. And it's really just putting that down and saying, nope, I'm going to cheer her on. I'm going to give her a hug. I'm going to give her a high five. I'm going to tell her you're going to be okay. Come on, let's keep going. And just being that person for yourself, no matter if you've had it ever in your life. I've had some beautiful relationships. I've had some horrible relationships. I've had some amazing things happen. I've had some really, really, really shitty things happen. And it's like, I've carried myself through all of them. And at one point, the bully was super loud. And the cheerleader was like, you've got this. I'm like, okay, we're going to do it anyway. And I'm going to cry and I'm going to deprecate on myself the entire way. But the cheerleader was in the background. And then all of a sudden, the cheerleader kind of moved next to it. And now the cheerleader's up here and the voice in the background is like back here. And that's really where we want to shift, where it's those voices. And I'm just going to go on a rant. I'm so sorry. But I hear so many people in the mental health world and the personal development world and just on our life's journeys. Like, I wish I just didn't have these thoughts. I wish I didn't have these feelings. I didn't feel this way anymore. And I'm like, I asked my fiance one question. I was like, if you could give away your willpower, would you do that? He was like, no, why would I give that away? I'm like, if you could give away the power of you making a choice, would you do that? He's like, no. I'm like, so then why would you want to give those things away? Because that is your power, your willpower, your feeling. You're going to give your feelings away. You're going to give your choice away. You're going to give all these beautiful human gifts that you have away just because you just don't like how you feel right now. It's temporary. But if I can't feel negative things, I can't feel positive things either. And that's just like I just see a blank wall. What is the point of that? I don't want that. I want to feel all the things. And there's a song from Sing, and I love music and I love movies. And there's a song from Sing where she's like, I want to feel shame. I want to feel happiness. I want to feel guilt. I want to feel joy. I want to feel all the things. And I think there's such power in that if we own that, but we just say and we shift that negative and positive self, that we can move through those feelings so much easier and with so much more light. If that, yeah, I'm going to leave it right there.
Girl, I have chills just from you saying that. So thank you for going on your rant. But it's the polarity, right?
Yeah.
And I've actually had this conversation with a few of my clients recently as well about the fact that we desire initially to have like everything good, and I want to have this perfect life where nothing ever goes wrong and nothing is
Mm-hmm.
ever bringing me to tears. I never feel like my life is falling apart. I feel seen and heard by everybody, but without the polarity, without that negative and positive like you're talking about, we could never appreciate the things that are good. We can
Yeah.
never appreciate the light without the dark. We can't
Yeah.
appreciate the beauty and the good things without ever experiencing the negative things.
Yeah.
So
Because
there's,
those would just be like the things, right? Like they would just be neutral.
yeah,
And like that's not fun either. Right. And
yeah,
like we're always caught in this duality of life where we don't want to rush things, but we want to take our time, but we don't want things to take forever and we need them to come now. But I also don't want to rush things because I know this is a journey. Right. And we're in this like duality of like, I want to take time, but I want it to hurry up and I want to be happy, but I also don't want to feel sad. And like we need all of it. We need all of it for it to actually work. And I feel like when it doesn't and we get stuck, it's because we're stuck in one of the sides. Either I'm just fake positivity and just rah rah, I'm so happy, but you're really not, or you're really sad and really hurt and you can't see that light. And I get both sides of it. I understand it, but there needs to be a balance of
yes.
both for us to move. Yeah.
Yes. And so you and I share a mentor and a coach. And so I'm feeling like it's leading into this, so I'm going to bring this up that she's spoken, and this is a program that you and I actually took together where she was saying your feelings, like when you have a raw emotion, I think it only lasts about 7 seconds, like the actual emotion, and then you can move on. And so whether that's sadness, joy, anger, happiness, like there's so many different emotions, but you truly only feel that for like 7 seconds. And then you
Yeah.
move on. You have the choice to move on, but it's our thoughts that give our emotions power. So
Yeah.
when you're deciding if you're going to sit in your sadness, in your misery, or sit in your joy for more than that 7 seconds, it's a choice. And so what
Yeah.
our mentor has shared that I want to share with everybody listening is that if you're going to sit in the sadness, we'll talk about that a minute, for because it's easier to sit in um the happiness. I don't think we spend enough time there. I think we spend more time in the negative
Yeah.
because we're just predisposed for multiple reasons. But when you do sit in that moment of grief, of sadness, of terror, being scared, not knowing where you're, how you're going to pay your bills, whatever the thing is, to
Mm.
find a way to romanticize the moment if you're going to sit in it anyway. And this is something that is a work in progress for me. And it's just so interesting. So I've gotten to a point where, at least for me, I'm self-aware of it, right? And I'm like, I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to stay mad. And I'm like, okay, but I'm making a choice. And I know that. And I'll allow myself to sit into those negative feelings, those feelings of like being unheard, being unseen, and then say, okay, how can I find a way to make this moment romantic? And her example to us was like going to the river and dipping your toes in the river, or drawing a bubble bath with rose petals and like, whatever, and then sitting in the tub and crying. And you can do that. It's beautiful as well, but there's other ways to do that as well that are a lot more simple. Like I don't have a river. I live in Phoenix. So it's dry as a
I was gonna
bone
say
out
I don't have
here.
a bath. Um,
Right. And so you can get really creative with the way that you do things. For me, like I'm also very musically motivated. So I have
too.
playlists. I have a playlist for when I'm pissed off. I have a playlist for when I'm sad. I have a playlist for when I'm happy and I'm excited and I'm celebrating. And it helps me because I have memories that are tied to certain things to
Yeah.
romanticize them. Even if they're sad memories, there's still things that I attach to the music. And so there's so many ways to help yourself to move through it. Allow yourself to make the choice to have that moment with yourself, but also it's interesting because I feel like it's also a mind hack where you're like almost enjoying the fact that you're sad in that moment to romanticize it. And it gives you your power back. I don't know if that makes sense. Have you
Yeah.
actually tried that yet?
Tried what specifically?
Like romanticizing your feelings when you're not feeling great.
So I never really looked at it in that way because that to romanticize it is a very interesting view. So I wouldn't say no. I would say no, I haven't done that specifically. However, when I'm sad, um, I do put on like a sad movie and just let myself be sad and eat popcorn and eat chocolate and just be sad and cry at the movie. Like, oh my God, like I get you, girl, right? And like just live in that moment. Um, However, I don't like to stay there. I like to feel it. Um, and maybe that's the resilience piece of me, right? Like maybe that's part of my whole thing. I don't really know. I like to feel it and like get it in and out and move from it and be like, okay, we've done this. Now you're here. We felt it. We moved it. We did the thing. We cried and screamed and this. But how can I look at this differently? What did I learn here? What did I do here? What can I take away from this? Yeah, I'm sad and that's okay. I'm allowed to be sad. It doesn't mean that I'm ignoring the sadness. I feel it and then I kind of put it over here. But then I let the cheerleader, right, be like, so what can we learn from this? And how can we look at this differently? How can we see this in a different light? All right, cool. When I last week spilt coffee all over my laptop
Yeah.
as I was literally having my son over here, my fiance's over here. I'm trying to get into a digital appointment. I spill the coffee all over my laptop and I was like, oh my God. And I could have lost my shit, right? And I'm sorry about the cursing, but I could have very easily. But I kind of paused and I was like, okay, clean up the coffee, immediate issue. Clean up the coffee, went in there, we figured out my phone. I'm like, I flipped over the laptop. I jumped on Zoom on my phone and we jumped in the appointment. And I looked at my fiance. I said, can you talk to her? Because I don't think I can talk right now. And he's like, that's fine. I'm like, okay, cool. He talked to her. He's like, can we reschedule this? And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, great. And then I felt it. And I just started crying on once he said she was gone. I just started kind of crying and processing like, because that's a loss. And that was a grieving moment of all the things, all the work, all the certifications, all the content, all the stuff that I have done, personal documents, family documents, photos, right? So much loss in that moment. And I just felt it and I just cried. And I looked at my fiance and I said, hey, right now, I am really sad. And I can't move from this space right now. You're more than welcome to hang out with me, but I'm going to be crying. And I'm not probably going to be the nicest person right now because I'm really upset about this. And I'm like, so if you want to sit here and support me, cool. If you want to leave and give me space, I'm cool with that. But just know, I'm probably not going to be so nice. I'm going to be sitting here and crying. I'm going to process this for a minute. And he was like, okay, no problem. He's like, you know what? I love you. I'm going to go out with our son. And he went in the living room with my son. Cool. And I just cried. Right. And then I took that breath. And I don't think there was anything romantic about that, sitting on my bed hysterically crying because I lost it. There's nothing cute about that. Like when I think romantic, I think like juicy and fun and delicious romance and love, right? I'm not thinking I'm bawling my eyes out because I just lost all of my things and now I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to prove myself? How am I going to keep going? How am I going to do all these things? I don't think there's anything romantic in that moment, but I felt it and I just cried and I just sobbed for a minute. And then I took a deep breath. And once that phase passes, because like you said, it's temporary, just let the emotion pass and cry and sob for a few minutes. I was in there for maybe 10 minutes, like really just going for it. And then it kind of passed. And I just took a nice, really big, deep breath. And I said, okay, what's next? Now what? And I'm like, I can't fix it. I went out there and I dried up the computer and I looked at them and I was like, all right, I don't want to take these feelings out on my family. It has nothing to do with them. I spilt it. But I'm really upset right now still, even though I just cried for a while. I need to process this somehow. So I went for a drive and I looked at my family and said, I need to go for a drive because I don't want to take any of this emotional residual out on you. You know how when you eat like Cheetos and you have that like residual, like the Cheeto stuff on your fingers?
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing. The emotion doesn't just go away because I cried for 15 minutes. Like I'm still feeling it. So anything that happens next, if my son comes up to me and he's like, Mommy, can we do this? I'm going to be annoyed. I'm going to be irritated. I'm going to be like, because I'm already on edge, no matter whether I processed it or not. And there's still nothing romantic about losing my shit on my kids because something just happened to me, right? That's not cute to me. And I'm like, okay, baby, I love you. I love you. You guys are good. Do you guys need anything from me? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, good. I'm going to go for a drive. I'll be back in a little bit. And I went for a drive and I happened to have like a one-on-one call with one of my mentors that I have. And I was just listening to her during that call. It was like a class that I was in, right? And I was just driving and just listening to that. And I pulled over on the side of the road and I cried more. And then I processed and I just sat there and I had this calm come over me. And then I cried a little bit more and I had this calm come over me. And I'm like, this is just how it looks. But when I came back 2 hours after messing up the laptop, I was feeling so much better. And I was like, yeah, I lost the laptop. Like it sucks. And I keep remembering more and more things that I've lost, but I'm not upset about it. I'm like, I'm kind of actually thanking the universe at this point. And that's weird because who would want to thank someone for ruining a laptop, right? And losing so much work. But to go from in like about 2 hours of doing that to be able to say, thank you. I'm not happy about this. I'm not jumping up and down that my computer's ruined right now. And I'm still trying to figure things out and fix it and all the things, but thanks. Because you really did just make things a lot simpler for me. And that's kind of what I've been asking for without realizing it. So we have to be so careful with our words. But when I look back at that day, I don't think there was anything romantic about that process. So I think that's a very interesting way to sit with it. And I allowed myself to go through the process, but I don't think it was a cute process.
I love that the things that I would view as like a way to romanticize are things you're like, I don't identify with this at all. Because I'm sure there's people listening where as I'm talking, they're like, girl, like you lost your damn mind. There is nothing romantic about this at all. Right. And so as I'm listening to you share this story, I completely understand your view because when you break a computer that's got your whole life on it, like that's expensive, it's an investment, and then you don't know if you're going to be able to recover everything, right? But as I'm listening to your story, you're right. There is nothing romantic at all about sitting on your bed and sobbing, having to cancel an appointment, thinking about all the things that you lost. But the piece, and I really feel like there's probably, I think we just covered all perspectives and all of the different types of people out there who are listening. Because as I'm listening to your story, the pieces that I thought you could have romanticized, at least from my perspective, that I would have romanticized was like going for a drive. Like when you chose to get in the car and to get outside and to be in the sunshine and be in the fresh air, when you roll the windows down, to appreciate that, to see the trees, to just take in and like be in the moment, right? The fact that you also allowed yourself to communicate and say, I need to go for a drive. I love you guys. I need my space because I love me, right? So it's like, it's those little things. It's not in every single moment. And that's the piece that I'm still kind of playing with too. Cause when I first learned about this concept, I'm like, girl, what are you talking about? Right. Which I know so many people felt, right?
Yeah.
But it's like those, and she also described it as like the scene of a movie, right? And so I don't know exactly what you saw when you were on this drive, but I think that that is like you kind of did romanticize it without knowing it. Maybe we call it something different, right? Like it
Yeah.
doesn't feel romantic, but it's something where you recenter your presence in the moment with
Yeah.
yourself. You're still doing something for yourself. And that did allow you, even though you were like, I'm going to sit in this emotion, I'm going to sit in it for as long as I freaking feel like it. And I'm going to do it by myself. And I'm going to go on a drive. I think that there's also romantics in that you love yourself so much. You knew exactly what you
Yeah.
needed in the moment. And the highlight, like the cherry on top of that is it took you 2 hours only
Yeah.
to ugly cry, to be pissed off, to want to scream, right? To
Oh my
get
God.
away from your
All these
family,
things.
to go out for a drive. Yeah. And it only took you 2 hours. And it didn't
Yeah.
mean like sitting in it and romanticizing it. It didn't mean you're sitting in it for a full weekend or for a full
Yeah.
day. You allowed yourself to sit in it, and that shit took 2 hours, and then you moved on from it. And so I love that you and I have very different perspectives on this. And I like that we just were able to talk about it because I think that, like I said, that there's both types of people listening right now. And I'm hoping that some of this resonated with you guys because it's just about allowing,
Yeah.
because we have a
Absolutely.
tendency to suppress that shit too and to just be like, nope, I'm fine. Everything's
I'm
great.
fine. I'm
Yeah.
fine. I hate that answer. I hate it so much. And even doing this process and saying, well, it took 2 hours and I kind of bounced back from it. And I call it the bounce back, right? It's one thing. I actually have a workshop that's going to be coming up for the bounce back workshop. But the bounce back doesn't mean that it's gone. It doesn't mean that I'm still not upset. I still lost. And I just realized last night, I looked at, like, memories come up on Facebook, and we had gone on vacation like 5 years ago with my son to Florida. And that's the only time he's ever been on a plane. He was at his Nona's house. Like, it was a big thing for us. I lost all those photos. And I realized that last night when that came up on Facebook, I was like, oh, I lost all of those. And it does. So bouncing back within 2 hours to say, okay, I can move from a better place now and not let this ruin the rest of my day, week, month, year, all the things, and focus on this. No, I get to bounce back and I could choose something different, but that also doesn't mean that I don't get to still grieve the losses when they do come up or be upset that my computer is still not here. It's effing annoying to have to start all over right now. I've lost tax documents, I lost photos, I lost everything for my business. The all the workshops and communities and classes that I've been in, all that stuff gone, right? I've lost so much. And it's not to say, well, no, none of it matters. It does matter. That shit sucks. All the certifications, I had like 30 certifications. And like, if you're a high achieving person who wants to achieve things in your life, you earn these certifications and it means so much to you. And then I just like, boop, I'm taking them all away. And I'm like, that bothers me, right? It doesn't mean it doesn't still bother me. It's still annoying. I still wish I had them back. But I get to also move from a different place of, well, now that I don't have them, now what? Okay, you can ask me for the certifications, but I went through the process, but I don't have the piece of paper. And it never really mattered to begin with anyway, the piece of paper, right? That was for my own validation. So it's like, it's a very interesting dynamic, but it doesn't mean that we're ignoring it, that we're saying I'm fine and we're pushing it away and putting it, like, letting it build up and boil up like water boils, right? We're not doing any of that. We're not pretending like it didn't happen. We're not pretending like it's just okay now. It's not. It's annoying. And I'm still trying to figure out the hard drive situation. I'm trying to see if I can get the hard drive out of it because the computer's dead now. And I'm like, well, now the hard drive is encrypted. And I'm like, well, what kind of hackers do I know? And I'm trying to figure out everything that I can figure out to get that information back. But I'm also moving forward too and saying, well, if I don't, what do I do now? And I'm still moving forward, but like trying to come back to it and resolve it. Right. So it's both. It's not just a
Yeah.
one or the other. I'm gonna let
Yep.
that sit.
Yeah, no, so good. And also super important to highlight that just because you allow yourself to sit in it, you romanticize, you don't romanticize, whatever, you practice your self-love, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't make the problem go away, right? So
Yeah.
that's also not what either of us are saying, right?
Yep.
And it just helps you to get it out in the moment and then to be able to refocus on a solution. So
Mm.
if you learn anything from this, just learn that it's great to sit in those emotions. Just know that you're choosing it to process it. And then it allows you the clarity of mind to say, well, this still sucks, It's not going to stop sucking, but it gives you the power back to figure out what direction I need to go in next. What is
Yeah.
my next move and how do I figure this out instead of staying in this state of fight or flight and being in that paralysis mode where you're like, I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And even bringing into that whole, and I hate saying the term victim mentality, right? Or feeling sorry for ourselves or being a martyr and like all those like shitty terms that I just don't like because life is hard sometimes, right? But it keeps you, the process that I'm going through and how we're talking about this, it keeps you from coming back and just being like, well, poor me, and this sucks, and I'm sad, and I'm this, and I'm that, and then taking it out on everyone else. And now I could have very easily stayed home, cried about it, and then my son could have come in like, mommy, can we play? I don't want to play. I'm not in the mood to play, baby. And I could have taken it out on him. And then he could have gotten upset because mommy doesn't want to play with me. And then my son, and it could have grown, right? It could have amplified, and I could have stayed there. And a lot of us do stay there because, yeah, it sucks and it's hard. But do you want it to grow and amplify and impact all your loved ones? Right? When I said I'm going to go on a drive, and I'm not going to say that, yeah, it definitely wasn't pretty because I was scrounging through change from my change drawer as I was like trying to breathe. I'm like, do you guys need anything from me? No, cool. I know I need to go for a drive. I'm going to do that. And I'm counting through my change jar to try to find enough money to go buy cigarettes. Because I'm a smoker, and today is very interesting because I haven't smoked yet today, and it's very interesting, but I'm going to leave that there. But I'm like, when you say it's like, it was romantic, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, going through my change, trying to find cigarettes, like flying, like my ride was to go to like a local reservation, Indian reservation to get cigarettes for like $3 because that's all I had at the moment. Right. And I'm like, yeah, I don't see anything cute about any of this. However, when we look back and when she says, you said the movie moment, when we look back on it, yeah, I can kind of see where it's a movie moment, right? And how I pulled over on the side of the road and I was sobbing and I was, oh my God, and I was this and I was that. And then I decided to move forward and triumph and all these things, right? And you could see the movie scene there, right? And that's cool, but it doesn't feel like any of that in real life. Not until we can really step out and be a week or more or years out of it, right? There's still traumas that happen to me that I'm like, well, shit, that's insane. Like, that's insane that I've gone through that. But it's taken me 20 years to be able to look at that and see that as like that movie moment. And I I think I'm just gonna let that be and let you move from there.
So, what is the biggest thing around resiliency and mental health that you work with women on? Like, because we struggle in these moments, right? These
Yeah.
moments of feeling like dealing with our emotions, processing them. So, when you take a woman who is in need of your help and she doesn't know where to start, like what is your thing that you share with them for that?
So I mean, the process that I have, I call it which is very interesting. It's intuitive action framework, but for short, it's the I am framework. And that framework is really built about raising our awareness, building our habits, and shifting our mindset. And they're all integrated. Like there's pieces of all three within each three, right? Like I can raise my awareness, but if I only do that once, that doesn't mean anything. Like, cool, I just noticed it this one time, not again. So building the habit of awareness, right? Building my habits upon my habits and habit stacking, right? So it's really, really in depth when you think about it from my angle. But when it's really to them, it's let's raise your awareness. Let's build your habits so you have better habits so that you can notice things happening more often. You can now do that on a regular basis, but now you can also have the mindset and the tools and the processes to process that and look at it differently and feel differently. But it all really starts with the I am. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, I am not happy. I am anxiety. I am stressed. I am depressed. I am this, right? And it's, well, what do you want to be? Right. And really learning to self acknowledge, self accept, self-love, and self-notice, right? That's self-awareness, right? And that's kind of where we start with, is really just, where are you now? Where are you now? How are you feeling now? What is it that you want now? What are you noticing now? What is missing now? And then we move from there, depending on what this beautiful soul needs, because we're all so different. Yeah, there's a framework. Yeah, there's a process, but we're also different. And we get so wrapped up in labels and that it's got to be a certain way and it's got to be done a certain way. And we got to should do this and I should do that. And I'm like, no, these are the frameworks. These are the things that we're going to be processing. But how we flow through those could also depend on you, because you need what you need. You don't need what I needed. This is my process. This is how I went through it. And yeah, if this works for you, cool. But however, if you need to go from here to here to here to here, I'm with you for that. And I'm here for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And so everything that you do is very dynamic because everybody is different.
Yeah.
And that's my
Yeah.
favorite part about what you do, especially when you're talking about, like this mold that we're supposed to fit in. We think that initially we're supposed to heal or experience life the same as everybody, when truly, and we've proved it in this episode, right? We all have very different experiences, very different perspectives. And so to come into a program and to experience something that's truly unique and tailored to you, and to honor whatever that process is and whatever they need, I feel like is very powerful. And I'm curious, is there
Yeah.
anything in your program where people, how do I want to say this? I'm going to have a lot of editing to do in this episode. What do I want to ask? I'm not trying to ask about your outcome. Okay, I think I got it. So within your program, Shelly, because there is so much dynamics with
Yeah.
the women that go through your program, is there anything that they can expect to experience with consistency? Meaning, is there something that is a common theme for them as they go through this process, even though it's still very dynamic?
It's an interesting question. Um, my only answer at this moment is my support,
I
that
love that.
no matter what you experience, no matter what comes up for you, no matter what you cry about, what you celebrate, no matter what it is, I'm going to be there to hug you, support you, love on you, whatever you need throughout this entire process. You can yell at me if you need to yell at me. You can cry at me if you need to cry at me. We can dance together and celebrate. But either way, you are not alone in this. You don't have to do this alone. I think that is the biggest piece, because the consistency is having someone there. And yes, you have the frameworks, you have the workbook, you have all kinds of things that you can come back to. Yeah, and I guess there can be consistency in that. Um, but me being there for them, right? And knowing that I'm there, whether it be for my text coaching where you can text me, right? Or you can jump in the community, or we might have a session, right? I'm here for you in many different ways. And that sometimes all you need is just to know that someone is there. You might not have to reach out to me, but you know that I'm here. And I have so many of my clients, like, I hear you in my voice, Shelly. I hear you in my head, Shelly. And I did it anyway. And I'm like, yes. And I'm like, that's amazing, because I'm there, right? I don't have to tangibly be there, but I'm there in their head and I'll take that. So like, I'm there for you. And I don't know if that's creepy or not, but it works. So I don't know if that answers the question. I love consistency, but I also think consistency comes from a very masculine, you got to do it this way, and there's got to be certain things, and there's got to be this, and there's got to be that, and you got to be doing and doing and doing. And I don't like any of that. It makes me just so irritated. So I love consistency, but I think there's power in our consistency of how we feel and how we show up for people, more than the things of what I can expect from you. I can expect that I'm always going to be here for you, even once you graduate from the program, right? Reach out to me. I'm here. I'm celebrating. I'm rooting. I am all the things. And I'm cool that I'll be that little Shelly on your shoulder, I'm cool with that. Because if that powers you to keep going, to keep moving, to keep shifting, to keep growing, to smile in that moment that you don't really want to, that's a win.
I think that's a great answer. I didn't have anything in particular in mind in terms of it being a part of your program structure, but I think that's just a testament to who you are and why, because I feel like a lot of people don't understand how powerful coaching is, right?
Yeah.
Like it's, I think people still look at it like it's therapy. And I guess in some ways, like there are some things that cross, but I think just for the accountability and to have somebody who's there, an
Yeah.
unbiased person who's just there to listen, to hold space, and to support you, to be that cheerleader, like you said at the beginning of our chat today,
Mhm.
like to have somebody that's a cheerleader for you when you can't hear your own cheerleader, I think
Yeah.
is beautiful. And I think if that's the only thing that is ever consistent in our lives at all, I think that is the thing that we need. So I think that was a perfect and a beautiful answer.
Well, thank you. It feels interesting. Like this conversation is just so fun to have.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to like re-listen to it.
Yeah.
Like I want to listen to it myself, and I never listen to my own podcasts. Like I don't listen to my own episodes. I edit them, I put them out there, and I'm like, cool. I don't listen to the ones I'm guests on, nothing. And I'm like, but this one, I'm like, I think I need to listen to this one back, just because I feel like it's coming from a very different place today, and it feels so fun. And I'm very interested in to see what comes from here.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a beautiful conversation and I'm just so excited to see where you go and to continue to see your clients make these amazing transformations and have these breakthroughs. It's just been so fun to watch. So for anybody who is listening and really resonates with you and your perspective and the things that you do, where can they find you?
Yes. Oh my God. Can I just share real quick? Because I just had
Yes.
Resilience Rising is my group coaching program just started this past Thursday.
Yeah.
And I have some beautiful souls in there. And she reached out, one of the clients that are in that container reached out to me the very next day and said, I already had a huge breakthrough where she's been holding herself in a certain way for her entire life, looking at herself in an entire different way. And I was like, that's so beautiful because it was literally like she had maybe 12 hours from class from when we were in that group session to where she's like, oh my God, I just completely broke through this entire identity of looking at myself like a fool this my entire life. And I was like, that's amazing. Now, what does that allow you to do? Right? How do you step from here? And it was just so cool to see it be such a quick, like, these containers can be so powerful if you allow it to let you just show up and you just allow it to do what it needs to do. It's so, so beautiful. But I was just so excited because I'm like, that was like less than 12 hours. And she's like, oh
Yeah.
my God, in the chats. And she's like, I'm freaking out. I'm shifting this and I feel so good. Like, this is amazing. I just blew up this entire identity that I've been looking at my entire life, holding myself back because of this. And I think that's just so amazing. Um, However, you asked me where people can find me, and that was not the answer. But you can reach me on Instagram and Facebook. It's Shelly Vecchio. I do have a website, although the website totally needs updating. agloriouslife.com. So it's agloriouslife.com. But again, the website's meh, if anything, right? But you can definitely reach me out on Instagram and Facebook, Shelly Vecchio. Feel free to DM me whatever you might need, and can have a conversation and whatever I can do to support you. I would love to support anyone and everyone in whatever you might need help with.
That's amazing. And we didn't talk about Glorious. So I want
We
you
did it.
to I want you to plug what the heck Glorious is because we just talked about your coaching. But let's just share with everybody a little bit about that and what it's about and why that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, so my coaching, yeah, is beautiful, and I love my coaching, and that's where I'm really at right now, right? That's Radical Radiance. Is the coaching, but it's all underneath an umbrella of glorious. So a glorious, glorious means a lot of different things at the moment, and it's still building. But glorious is really to help people on their mental health and their personal development journeys to create and sustain positive change in their lives in different ways. So if you're not ready for coaching, I get that, because at one point I was like, I don't even know what a coach is. What does that mean? Right. So like I was there too, and I get that. However, I still needed help. And if you see, if anyone watches a video, you'll see my shirt. It says "Wake Up, Feel Beautiful." When we're starting to make these changes in our life, we need reminders. We need assistance. We need environmental triggers. We need help, because it's not easy. We lose it very quickly. And Glorious was born from that, in that I wanted to make it easier for you to have an environmental trigger to keep making the changes you wanted to make, because you can't carry around post-its everywhere. You can't write down on every mirror where you are. You can't do that at work. You can't do that while you're driving, but you can wear a shirt. And it started there. And it needs to be built, right? I do need help with that area. I'm not even going to lie about that, because it's a very different world than coaching. Um, but Glorious is more or less the reminders that you need to keep going. When you just need a little additional help, you need that post-it, but you're not home, right? It's there to support you so that you can set up your home in a beautiful way and have shirts and apparel and all these things. And then there's also the podcast piece of it, the Not So Glorious Life. But right now it's on pause, right? But I'm sure you could probably find it on podcasts, places, and things like that. It's still up there, I think, unless my laptop dying kind of ruined that. I don't really know, to be honest with you. And I'm not even going to go looking for that at the moment. Um, but that was really just a way for us to share our real stories, because shit is not pretty all the time, and it's not romantic all the time. And me sifting through my change, trying to just get enough to go get cigarettes isn't cute, right? But it's a real moment, right? I had an addiction, right? And I'm not, I'm a smoker. I don't think I've ever admitted that out loud. And it's very interesting. But to share those real stories, because we look at social media and we see so many highlight reels. Everyone's okay. Everyone's happy. Everyone's living and traveling and having a beautiful life. No, they're not. And people always tell me, well, why don't you talk about this on the podcast? I'm like, because that's not what it's about. And like, it irks me, because I'm like, that's not real life. And like, we cry, we scream, we yell, we have tantrums. No matter how old we are, we have these moments. And that's what the podcast was about, to share these moments, share these kind of stories, but say, yeah, but look at me on the other side. I had a tantrum, but look at me here. I can overcome it. I can do it, because there's still plenty of people out there having all these real moments. We all do. But maybe they don't know that they can actually get to the other side. So the podcast was always just to show them that. So the Glorious is just this big, beautiful thing that encompasses the coaching for when you're ready for it, but has the reminders that you need along the way when you feel like you can do it on your own, but you're kind of struggling, and those kind of things. And the podcast is there to just kind of share our stories. And it's a huge empire that's being built right now, one step at a time. And I'm excited about it. But you can definitely check it out on the website, but don't judge my website, because I'm not a graphic designer and it kind of doesn't feel the vibe at the moment, but it's there to make you happy. And I'm here to help.
Yes, I love that. And I want to thank you again for joining and just having this absolutely like open and raw conversation, because I don't, like you just said, I don't think that there's enough of that out there. You can't have the positive, amazing moments without the negative. And if anyone actually believes that anybody you're watching out there on social media doesn't have these moments, then you are sadly mistaken, poorly
Yeah.
mistaken. And I think most people would probably edit some of our conversation out
Yeah.
today. And I'm not going to do that, because we have a everything goes podcast, right? Where we don't hide things. That's the whole point, right? Like we break the barriers here. We talk about things, nothing is off limits. And these are the things that need to be talked about, that not everything is okay. And sometimes we get worked up in the moment thinking about it and talking about it. And that's okay. It adds this element, shouldn't even be we add an element, but it does, right? Of
Yeah.
authenticity, of transparency. And that should be something that everyone is doing. Those should be the influencers out there in the world who are
Yeah.
talking about the shitty things just as much as they're talking about the great things, because that's actually what people want to see and what people want to hear. And not all of this fluff, beautiful, perfect life bullshit that's not true, no matter how much money you have, no matter how beautiful your children or your spouse is in theory, right? Like it's all a
Right.
facade. And I know it needs to be knocked down. I'm over here like smash the patriarchy.
Yes.
Not really, but
Rebel
anyways, like
Rise.
but like it's all so important because it's a part of the human experience. So I just want to thank you again for, being open and being vulnerable and willing to have this conversation. And I am so excited for our followers to connect with you and just learn from you and the grace that you give yourself every day. So thank you so much for spending time with us today, Shelly.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I keep forgetting that I'm even on camera because I just look at you and I'm like, let's have a conversation. And I love that it's so comfortable. And I love that you're you and that you're doing this. And I just rooting you on and cheering you on. And I love you so much. And thank you for having me. And I really hope that this helps someone and this shows someone that, hey, you're not alone, but we're here to also help you when you're ready. Um, and I think that's a beautiful thing because I think people need that these days. And I thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Rebel Rise podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode and invite your friends to join us next week. This is your time. Now get out there and rise.